Hello, my name is Tabo, and this is 3 ways you can save time while producing in Ableton. The first one is creating a default audio effects rack for every audio and MIDI channel that you create. So in Ableton, you have the option to save as default audio track, or if it's MIDI, save as default MIDI track. And what this means is that when you create a new audio or MIDI track, it will load with whatever settings you left on the track when you set it up. So this means that you can start with a default effect rack on every track every time you add something. This is going to save time because you won't have to go looking for the effects you want to use commonly on every track. Let's quickly walk through what my default effects rack looks like. I start out with a utility on the left, which is something that I always use. Then I also have an EQ8 visible at the end of the chain, and this is set up the way that I like, and it's also great as a visual cue to see what's going on with the audio of my track. So the way I have my EQ set up is I high pass and low pass at the top and bottom, then a shelf, low shelf, and a high shelf. Then I've got 4 bell curve points in the middle that I can use. I generally find that setting on the EQ8 always works for what I'm trying to do, so I never have to change it, which is great. Then in between that, I have these which are minimized, which is also helpful because you can save them as they're minimized. That way they're not taking up a ton of space on the screen, and they're also bypassed right here. You see they're all turned off. So the first one I have is a second EQ8 that I can use as a pre-effect EQ before the chain. Then I have a gate. I have a compressor, I have a saturator, which I'm always using, auto filter, which I'm also always using, and then delay, which is super common. So I find that these 8 effects are the ones I most commonly reach for, so this is what I've saved as my default. And I keep it the same for audio and MIDI. I find that I'm using them the same, but if you have different use cases, you can save one setting for MIDI and one setting for audio. The second way to save time is by creating a template for your projects that opens up as the default start template when you start a new project in Ableton. So this can be anything you want, but you want to think about it in terms of what are the things that you commonly do when you start a project. Maybe add drums, maybe program chords or bass lines. So the idea is to have tracks in place already that are loaded up with basic instruments that are ready to do those things for you. You can also set up a series of audio channels ready to record whatever interface you have. So say you have an 8-channel interface with 8 instruments plugged into it. You can have that pre-configured to be ready to record those instruments at a moment's notice. So as soon as you open a project, you're ready to record. You don't have to create the tracks every time. So let's quickly walk through my template. Maybe this will give you some ideas of how you might want to set up your own. So for mine, I start out at the top with a group of drums where I have a punch box, a kick drum synthesizer at the very top, which I commonly use for one layer of my kick drums. So I have that ready to go. Below that, I have drum racks full of samples from my sample library that I've created. So each of these drum racks is dedicated to one particular kind of drum. In this case, it's kicks. So you see here, so that means I can quickly audition a bunch of different samples and just quickly start programming without having to dive through my library or go digging through certain sound packs, etc. And you'll see as we go down this group, I also have one for snares. And also a bunch of claps, a bunch of hi-hats, closed hats, open hats, tom drums, percussion, and shakers. You could come up with your own way, and it does take a little bit of time at the front end to take the time to make this, but you'll definitely save time in the long run because you'll use this template over and over and over again. It's also a good time to mention that, maybe a template is a temporary thing where You set up a certain environment of sounds that you use to create sketches in. So you can set a template with certain presets of sounds, drums, synths, etc., and then open that template over and over and just keep iterating different ideas. And you'll end up with maybe an EP, or maybe you choose from the best of those ideas and take one of those ideas through completion to a full track. Let's keep diving and see what else I've got here. So this is a multi-track recording for my TR-8S. So basically just have 4 audio channels routed through my sound card, my mixing desk over here. One for the kick, one for the percussion, one for snares, and one for hi-hats of my TR-8S drum machine. So this is already pre-routed. I keep it plugged in the same way all the time. So as soon as I'm wanting to record the TR-8S, I have the channels here to do it. Then I've got a simple bass patch right here, which is the Arturia Modular V, set up to a patch that I made, which is just a nice sine wave. Gets me going for bass lines. And I've got just a simple piano patch as well, just for sketching out chords. And I've got a strings for doing pad parts, and then the SEM synth here, set to the default from Arturia, so I like that for just like synth sounds. And then below that, I have a couple more channels here from the Soundcraft mixer. These are for my condenser microphone, the Korg SV1, which is my keyboard right here, and then the resampling channel, which is actually recording the output of my computer through the board. So that way I can like resample from YouTube or other sound sources that are playing through my computer, sample them directly into Ableton, which is great. And then I just leave a blank audio file down here because a lot of times when I'm opening Ableton, I'm just going to be quickly editing like a DJ set or dragging in some audio to edit. So I just have an audio channel ready to do that. And it seems small, but these little things stack up and adds time. And also, it helps with the problem you run into where you open Ableton and you're staring at a blank screen. If you create your custom template, it's a world that you step into that you're familiar with, you're ready to create as soon as you open the program, which is great. And the third thing is something that I recently did, which I put off for years, and I could not believe the change it made in my production. And it's really simple. It's just organizing your sample library. So this is my old way of doing it. It's basically like, all of these sample packs and folders that I've collected over the years, split up into folders where you go in and they're set up in the way that you download them in, which you have to dive through different folders and try to find stuff. You have to remember where things are. And so this is a problem because say I wanted to look for percussion loops, I'd have to remember which packs have percussion loops in them and then go dive and find those packs, and then maybe I would find 5 percussion loops and I wouldn't like them. So then I'd have to think, okay, what other pack had percussion loops in it? And inevitably it led to me just sort of forgetting about a lot of my sample packs and just sort of not wanting to look for samples because it was kind of a pain. So what I did was take about 3 or 4 hours to just go through and organize everything. And basically what I did was created this system of categorization that I developed, and then went through all of my folders and basically copied the samples into their respective folders, irregardless of what pack they came out of. So now if we look in drum loops and we go to percussion loops, you're going to see that this is a big list of every percussion loop that was in my library, which is so nice to be able to just look through everything I have. And you also notice that most of the files are named with the pack that it was a part of. So if I'm looking for something in a specific pack, I can still find it. And this just really streamlined my approach to looking for samples and just made it way less of a headache, and is so satisfying to do now. When I'm looking for a sound, I can go look for the specific folder that I'm interested in and then hear every sound that I have that fits in that folder. And now the process is when I download a new sample pack, I can just divide up the files into their respective folders and they'll be there ready for me to find. So those are my 3 tips. I hope it helps you save some time in your production journey. You can set it up yourself. Let me know in the comments if it works for you, if you have other ideas to help people. If you're interested in learning more, I do offer in-person one-on-one sessions and lessons. So I do that both here in my studio in New York and also online. So you can find the options that I offer on my website, which will be linked in the description, and we can talk more about it. Peace.